The video showed my neighbor smiling as he poured concrete into my French drain at 2:13 a.m. The same man who stood in my soaked basement 12 hours later patted my shoulder and said, "Old houses, Mark. They always find a way to break your heart." I'm Mark Ellison, 39, a civil engineer in Spokane, Washington. My wife, Leah, and I bought our 1968 ranch house on Alder Court for $412,000 in June 2021. It had cedar siding, a sloped backyard, and a basement I'd spent 14 months turning into my dream workshop. New cabinets, epoxy floor, a $6,800 table saw, my dad's old drafting desk, still smelling faintly of pencil shavings and pipe tobacco. Our neighbor, Carl Hensley, 54, lived to our left with his wife, Denise. He owned Hensley Landscape and served as treasurer of our tiny HOA. At first, Carl seemed like the kind of neighbor people brag about. He lent me a post-hole digger, brought over ribs from his smoker, and called me Engineer Man while laughing through his mustache. "Anything you need, Mark," he'd say, clapping a heavy hand on my shoulder. Neighbors look out for neighbors. The first red flag was the survey stake. I'd paid $950 to have our property line marked before replacing the fence. One orange stake near the back corner disappeared 2 days later. Carl shrugged, chewing mint gum so loudly I could hear it over my mower. "Kids probably pulled it," he said. Then my gravel strip along the side yard kept getting tire marks, deep crescent-shaped ruts pressed into the wet stone. Carl's trailer barely fit his driveway, and one afternoon I saw fresh mud on my side gate. "Carl, you been cutting across my strip?" He smiled too fast. "Not me, buddy." The third sign was the smell, wet cement, sharp and chalky, near my downspout one cool October morning. I dismissed it. That mistake cost me $38,700. On March 15th, at 6:18 a.m., I stepped into the basement and heard water before I saw it. A soft, horrible lapping sound. My sock hit cold water, and my stomach dropped like I'd missed a stair. The air smelled like damp cardboard, sawdust, and metal. "Leah," I shouted, "don't come down here." She appeared at the top of the stairs in blue scrubs, her face going pale. "Mark, what happened?" "I don't know." Water covered the floor, reflecting the fluorescent lights in broken white strips. My tool cabinets were soaked. Storage boxes leaned like they were tired. My dad's drafting desk sat in 2 inches of water, the legs darkening as it drank it in. The plumber arrived at 8:40. His name was Victor, and he crouched outside near the drain cleanout, tapping the pipe with a wrench. His brow folded. "This isn't a collapsed pipe," he said. "What is it?" He pulled out a chunk of gray material, still gritty at the edges. "Somebody blocked this line." My mouth went dry. "Blocked it with what?" Victor looked toward Carl's house, then back at me. "Concrete." I confronted Carl that afternoon while industrial fans roared in my basement like airplane engines. He stood by his mailbox wearing leather gloves, smelling like fresh mulch and coffee. "Someone poured concrete into my drain," I said. My hands were trembling, so I shoved them into my jacket pockets. Carl blinked slowly. "That's strange. My camera covers that side yard." His jaw tightened for half a second. "Then check it." "I will." He leaned closer. "Careful what you accuse people of, Mark." That night, I opened the security app. The side yard camera showed nothing from 1:57 to 2:26 a.m. Just a black gap. My pulse thudded in my ears. I checked the device log and saw signal interrupted. Then I remembered the old trail camera I'd mounted in the lilac bush after raccoons kept getting into our compost. It wasn't connected to Wi-Fi. It used a memory card. My fingers felt numb as I slid the card into my laptop. The first few clips showed branches moving in the wind. Then, at 2:13 a.m., Carl appeared in grainy night vision, carrying a white bucket. He looked right at my disabled camera and smiled. It got worse. The next clip showed him kneeling by my drain cleanout, prying it open with a screwdriver. He poured slowly, carefully, like he'd done it before. Then he wiped the rim with a rag and walked back through the gap in our shared hedge. Leah stood behind me, one hand over her mouth. "That's Carl." "I know. Why would he do this?" I didn't answer because my chest felt packed with ice. The answer came 2 days later in my mailbox, an HOA violation letter. It claimed my poorly maintained drainage system had caused neighborhood water runoff concerns and proposed a $5,000 fine unless I allowed temporary landscape access across my side yard for remediation. The letter was signed by Carl Hensley, treasurer. Twist number 1. He hadn't just damaged my property. He had created the problem so the HOA could force access over my land. Twist number 2 came from Denise, though she didn't mean to reveal it. She caught me outside taking photos and said, "Carl said the buyers won't care about that strip once the easement is recorded." Buyers. Carl was trying to sell his house to a developer who wanted to combine 2 lots and widen the driveway between them. My side yard was the missing piece. For 3 nights, I barely slept. The basement fans hummed through the floorboards. The house smelled like mildew and plastic sheeting. Leah and I ate dinner standing at the kitchen counter because the table was covered in insurance forms, repair estimates, and damp family photos. I kept replaying Carl's smile on that video. Not the pouring, not the trespassing, the smile. My dad's drafting desk warped along one edge. I ran my hand over the bubbled wood and felt something hot rise in my chest. That desk had survived 3 moves, 1 house fire next door when I was a teenager, and 30 years in my father's office. It did not survive Carl Hensley. The turning point came on March 19th, when Carl walked over while a restoration crew hauled ruined cabinets into a dumpster. He held a travel mug and had the nerve to sigh. "Shame," he said. "You should have let me handle your drainage last fall." The metal clipboard in my hand bent under my grip. I looked at him and said, "You're right, Carl. I should have paid closer attention." He smirked like he'd won. That was the last time he smiled at me. I called a property attorney named Priya Nair. Her office smelled like lemon polish and printer toner, and she listened without interrupting while I laid out the timeline. When I showed her the trail cam video, she sat back and said, "Do not post this online." I wasn't planning to. Good. We're going to make him deny it formally first. That sentence landed like a chess piece hitting the board. Priya sent Carl a certified letter asking him to preserve all communications, invoices, HOA documents, and security footage. We hired an independent drainage engineer for $1,400. Victor provided a signed statement. I photographed every inch of damage with date stamps. Leah found Carl's HOA letterhead in old emails and noticed something. The board had never voted on my violation. Priya's plan was simple. Let Carl keep lying, but only in places where lying had consequences. We also set one trap. I placed a temporary clean-out cap with a tiny tamper seal and installed 2 legal cameras on my property, one in the gutter, one inside a birdhouse Leah painted blue. The morning after Carl received the certified letter, the seal was broken. The birdhouse camera caught him reaching over the fence at 5:42 a.m., trying to remove the cap. Priya only said, "That helps." Execution took 6 weeks, and every day felt like walking with a stone in my shoe. Carl avoided me, but his confidence leaked through the neighborhood. He told Mrs. Alvarez across the street, "Mark's trying to blame me for his old plumbing." He told the HOA president, "The guy's desperate for insurance money." Then he made his biggest mistake. He filed a claim with his own business insurance, saying his company had been hired by the HOA to inspect my drainage and that any damage was pre-existing. Priya subpoenaed the work order. There wasn't one. She subpoenaed his concrete supplier. There was a receipt from March 14th for 1 bag of fast-setting concrete, paid with Carl's business card at 6:03 p.m. The near miss came when Carl's attorney claimed the trail camera footage could have been misinterpreted. My stomach clenched when I heard that on the conference call. Priya didn't even blink. "Then your client can explain the bucket, the disabled camera, the broken tamper seal, and the concrete receipt under oath." Silence filled the line. Then Carl muttered, "This is harassment." Priya said, "No, Mr. Hensley. This is documentation." The climax happened at the June 2nd HOA meeting in the community clubhouse. The room smelled like old carpet and burnt coffee. 23 neighbors sat in folding chairs while rain ticked against the windows. Carl arrived in a navy blazer, trying to look offended instead of nervous. Denise sat beside him, arms crossed tight across her chest. The HOA president, Beth Morano, cleared her throat. "We're here to address the violation issued to Mark Ellison and related concerns." Carl stood. "I'll say this plainly. Mark's drainage failed, and he's trying to shift blame because repairs are expensive." My pulse hammered, but my voice stayed steady. "Beth, may I connect my laptop?" Carl's head snapped toward me. "What is this?" I said the truth. The video played on the white pull-down screen. Grainy black and white Carl walked into view with the bucket. A few people gasped. Mrs. Alvarez whispered, Oh my goodness. Carl's face changed in stages. First confusion, then calculation, then fear. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. Denise turned slowly toward him. Carl. He shook his head. That's not. The second clip played. Him reaching over the fence to tamper with the cap. Beth's voice was sharp. Carl, did you issue an HOA violation without board approval? He swallowed. I could see sweat shining above his upper lip. I was protecting property values. I stood, my palms flat on the table. You flooded my basement to steal access to my land. He pointed at me. You can't prove motive. Priya, sitting beside me, slid a printed email across the table. Actually, we can. Beth read it aloud. It was Carl's message to the developer. Ellison won't sell, but HOA pressure may get us temporary access. Once access is established, easement discussion becomes easier. The room went dead quiet except for the ring. Denise pushed her chair back, so hard it scraped the floor. You told me Mark agreed. Carl looked smaller than I'd ever seen him. 2 weeks later, victory arrived in layers. Carl resigned from the HOA. The board voided the fine and issued a written apology to me and Leah. His landscaping company lost its city maintenance contract after the insurance investigation flagged his false statements. His contractor license was suspended pending review. He paid $61,480 in damages, legal fees, restoration costs, and replacement value for my ruined tools and furniture. The court also granted an injunction preventing him from entering my property or contacting us except through attorneys. By August, a for sale sign stood in Carl's yard. Denise had moved out before that. Carl left Alder Court in a rented box truck on a hot afternoon, his shoulders hunched, neighbors watching from porches he used to rule like a mayor. I didn't wave. That fall, Leah and I rebuilt the basement better than before. New drainage, new workshop, new cabinets. I had my dad's drafting desk professionally restored, and the first time I sat at it again, the room smelled like fresh pine and clean paint instead of mildew. The developer who wanted Carl's lot ended up approaching me directly. I said no. Then I bought Carl's old side strip from the new owners for a fair price and planted 3 maple trees along the line. Sometimes justice looks like a courtroom. Sometimes it looks like a liar's face under fluorescent lights while his own neighbors watch the truth play across a screen. Carl tried to bury me under concrete and paperwork. Instead, he built the foundation for his own downfall. I still live on Alder Court. My home is stronger, my boundaries